viewpoint, and he was consistently obedient to the Word of God and to the things that God told him. And we've seen through all these examples that when he did what God told him to do, and when the people did what God told them to do, then they were successful. When there was sin in the camp, then there was a problem. And one of the quotes that I got out of one of the commentaries I thought was a really good quote for us today. It says, "We too will experience victory over our spiritual enemies, the world, the flesh, and the devil, to the extent that we do God's will as He has revealed it in His Word." I thought that was a pretty good comment to kind of summarize, what we've talked about up to this point. Any other comments about those verses? All right. Now let's look at this next section, verses 16 through 23. And this is basically, starting in this chapter and going into the next chapter, pretty much a summary of the conquest that Joshua did. So in this chapter, verses 16 through 23, we're going to talk about the conquest of the land. So let's look at verses 16 and 17. So Joshua took all that land, the hills and all the south country, and all the land of Goshen, and the valley and the plain and the mountain of Israel, and the valley of the same, even from the Mount Halak that goeth up to Seir, even unto Baglag in the valley of Lebanon, under the Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took, smote them, and slew them. So this is pretty much an overview of the land that Joshua had taken, which really, all this land was pretty much the southern part and also into the northern part of Canaan. And not only did he take the plains, he took the valleys, he took the hills, and pretty much made a clean sweep of everything that's on there. And he gave a little bit, better description. He talked about the bald mountain, which was Halak, which is mentioned here, and it's mentioned again in the 12th chapter in verse 7 as the southern boundary of Canaan. And it's hardly it's kind of a row of white cliffs in that particular area, and it's about 8 miles. I think it's about 8 miles below the Dead Sea, and it's kind of the dividing line that separates everything. And it's a lot of land, a lot of towns, and they killed a lot of people during this battle. And now they have pretty much began to clear the land out and set everything up for the division of the land with to the different tribes. Comments about those verses? All right, let's look at verse 18. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. So for the accounts that we see of these conquests, they're all put together, and they're in just a couple of chapters. But these victories were not obtained all at once or in a few days, and there was probably more kings and more people involved than what can be mentioned here in all of these writings. So what we're talking about here is a period of some years. Now, depending on who you read and the opinion of some of the scholars, probably the one that I would give the most credibility to is Josephus, who was closer to the action than some of the other people that commented on this. His opinion is that these wars lasted around 5 years, and he kind of ran it from five to 7 years to subdue the land. Some of the other scholars they're stuck on 6 years, but then they kind of admit that, well, it could have been 6 or 7 for all this to have been finished completely. So we don't want to have the impression that this was an easy battle, and that it just happened in a period of just a few days, because it didn't happen that way. These were full scale battles that were fought, and obviously God being on the side of the children of Israel made the difference in it. Comments about verse 18. All right, let's look at verse 19. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hephathites, the inhabitants of Gibeon, and all the other took in battle. So Gill again had a very interesting note in his commentary, and I want to read it. It says, according to the Jews, Joshua, upon his first landing in Canaan, sent letters and messages to all the inhabitants of the land, offering them peace on certain terms, particularly that he sent 3 messages, or proposed 3 things to them, that those who had a mind to flee might flee, that those who were desirous of making peace might make it, and those who were for war, let them fight, and all were for the last, and so perished. I looked through a whole bunch of other writings and could not find any indication that something like that happened. And I find that kind of hard to believe that it did, because that's not consistent with the scriptures and what God's plan was for the children of Israel taking the land of Canaan. And I really don't know where he came up with that. It's not mentioned by Josephus. It's not mentioned by any of the other ancient writers that something like that took place. I just found that pretty. Well, it could, and I just thought that was that just kind of struck me, because pretty much all of the other ones that I've read after, they were very consistent with the destruction that happened, and it was God's will that happened, especially in light of what we're going to talk about here in the rest of the chapter. I just find that hard to believe. Any other comments about that verse? All right, let's look at verse 20. For it was the Lord to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly, and that they might fight, they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them as the Lord commanded Moses. So this hardening of the hearts of these Canaanites, this was a punitive type of thing. And, their iniquity had come pretty much full circle in the eyes of the Lord. And he had long, God had put up with this for a long time. And, he saw no repentance or no remorse from the children, or from the Canaanites. So now he was going to put his justice upon these people. They had sinned against all the children of Israel and all these different types of things. And it's kind of like Pharaoh. God hardened Pharaoh's heart also, and put them in the position where they thought that they could destroy the children of Israel. That their gods that they worshipped were stronger than the true and the living God. So really, no city made peace with the Israelites except for Gibeon and one of the Hivites, which we talked about in verse 19. Other than that, all of them decided that they wanted to take on the children of Israel, and they wanted to battle them, and they felt like that their gods were stronger than the true and the living God. So God had given Moses instructions that were passed on to Joshua, and there's a couple of places, a couple of scriptures I want to read here to show that it was God's plan initially that all of the Canaanites be destroyed. In Deuteronomy 7:1, it says, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land where thou shalt goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee. And it lists a whole bunch of nations here that they want to be delivered. And in verse 2 it says, and when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter shall not give unto his son, nor daughter shalt not take unto thy son. So here is the biblical lesson, which has always been difficult, for the people of God to learn. God wanted these people destroyed so that they wouldn't be a stumbling block to the children of Israel. So, Deuteronomy basically commanded them that when they went into this area, that they were to destroy the inhabitants. They weren't supposed to have any mercy on them. They weren't supposed to make any deals with them. And the ones that were left, they weren't supposed to marry or have any relationship with. And this was given to Moses, long before all these things had happened. And this was going to remove the temptation for the children of Israel to follow other gods. So we know from other writings in the Bible that this only lasted a short period of time. That once they got kind of intermingled with the Canaanites and the Gentiles, that the children of Israel did start to intermarry, and it caused them a lot of problems as a result of that. And again, they kind of strayed away from the things that God wanted them to do. But I really think that the major thing that God was thinking about was keeping the children of Israel out of adultery and worshiping idols of these other groups. Comments about that verse? Okay, we'll finish up the rest of this chapter next week. Keith's got that smile on his face. All right. Yeah.